Now Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Almighty had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of leprosy." Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. "By all means go," the king of Aram replied. "I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read, "With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you, so that you may cure him of leprosy." As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes and said, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message: "Why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to say to him, "Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored to you, and you will be cleansed." But Naaman went away angry and said, "I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Almighty his God, wave his hands over the spot, and cure me of my leprosy. Are not the Aban and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I have washed in them and be cleansed?" So he turned and went off in a rage. Naaman's servants went to him and said, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, 'Wash and be cleansed'?" So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him. And his flesh was restored, and he became clean, like that of a young boy.
Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now, there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie: the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. And one who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath. And so the Jewish leaders said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." But he replied, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" So they asked him, "Who is this fellow who told you to pick it up and walk?" The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Later Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who made him well.
I'm going to talk about healing this morning. I don't know if you're at all like me. That's not necessarily something I want to hear about. Great, we're going to talk about healing this morning. Fine. And this is probably going to fall into one of those categories where I'm supposed to just pray about it and have a lot of faith and it will be okay. Even though my life experience, there's been a lot of stuff that I've wanted healed, that praying about it and having a lot of faith about it has not made it okay. I mean, I don't know about you, but we start talking about, throughout a lot of my life experience, we start talking about healing, especially we start talking about healing in church, and I start getting defensive and wound up, and I start getting fearful, and I start preparing arguments, and And there's a really big piece of me that needs to have logic in this whole thing. And I have a rather scientific mind, and illogical things are upsetting to me. Now, I was raised in church, but I was not raised in a church where we throw up our hands and clap and dance when we do music. That's something I've come to since I came to MCC, and I got to admit, I have a soft spot for it. I love it a lot. But that's not what I grew up in. I grew up among the frozen chosen. And it's all very orderly, and it's all very calm and very quiet and completely explainable. And you know what? That works for them. I'm not taking that away from them. It turns out that it's not the path that I have come to enjoy a lot. So I'm going to tell you a story before I start in on the scripture here. About something, in my arguments with healing have come a long way. And I'll tell you, I work these days as a chaplain. I worked for a while as a chaplain in hospice, where I got to be present with people who were experiencing healing by transitioning out of a life that was closing and moving on to the next thing. And I got to be present with people who had to deal with the healing of the grief and the loss of losing that person. And now, these days, I work in addictions, and that means I get to work in the healing with people who are deciding to live. Either way, I get to sit at a crossroads with people. It's kind of exciting. But I've been working with healing for several years now, and so I think about this a lot. I also do Reiki. And continue to, I'm working on advanced Reiki training and the master degree right now. So that also informs, I think about healing a lot, I guess is my point. But my original journeys with healing started a while ago, in my late 20s. I had back pain. I had lower back pain that was debilitating me to the point that I was walking around like a little 90-year-old lady. It was upsetting, it was frustrating, it was definitely getting in the way of my work. I was not in a position where I could just not work, so I was still going to work every day and walking like this, and people were in pain looking at me. And I would go to the doctor, and I love this. I would go to the doctor, and the doctor would say, "You're too young to have back pain." Okay, I'm 28. I'll grant you, I'm too young to have back pain, but I have back pain. So now what? And I understand today, from the perspective that I'm in today, like I said, I work with addictions. I get that there are certain words that doctors hear and they think, oh, they're drug seeking. Okay, and I am deeply grateful that my doctor never gave me opiates, because that would have given me a whole nother problem in the guise of a temporary solution. So I'm very grateful that they didn't think that I was drug seeking, and they didn't help me seek drugs. They gave me anti-inflammatories, and I would go back they'd say, all right, here, try this, and come back and see me in about 4 weeks, and I'd come back, and I'm like, I still have pain, okay? And they'd be like, well, you're too young to have pain. It's 6 months of this, okay? 6 months later, they finally say, all right, well, let's order an MRI and see what's going on. We couldn't do this right up front, because I'm too young to have back pain. Okay, so eventually we order an MRI. The MRI reveals that I have a herniated disc in my lower back, which is probably the source of the pain. Now, there's a couple of interesting things that happen here. One of them is the moment that there was a name for where that pain was coming from, it began to abate. I am convinced today that part of that was the moment that somebody stopped invalidating my reality and telling me that I shouldn't be having the pain that I'm having, and that I don't have the pain that I'm actually having. The moment somebody started validating my reality, that pain started to say, okay, good, you noticed me, you recognized me, we're dealing with it, and we move on. And they gave me some really good strategies and explanations for dealing with that. Now, I've had some flare-ups with that back pain over the years since then, usually when I do something foolish and stupid that I know I'm not supposed to do, like ride roller coasters. I like roller coasters, but roller coasters need to be part of my pre-back injury life. They really do. And it doesn't it doesn't really matter whether it was an injury, whether it was degeneration, or whatever it was. It just is. It's a fact of my life, and it's not a fact that slows me down or debilitates me in any way today, as long as I do what I'm supposed to do, and I don't do what I'm not supposed to do, all right? So that's one interesting thing. The other interesting thing that happened as part of that was, at the time, I was living in Florida, and I was a little baby student pastor type person. I was busy fighting with God about whether I needed to go to graduate school and get a master's of divinity. God won that argument, by the way. But at that time, and I was doing a whole lot of stuff for my local church, including launching a Sunday evening worship service with a praise band. And I was a vocalist for that praise band, which was a huge step outside my comfort zone, because again, I was raised among the frozen chosen. We read music, we do it in 8-part harmony, we sing the classics. You know, it's really stepping out on the edge to be singing Bridge Over Troubled Water, all right? Woo, we're living on the edge. Balm and Gilead was real hip for them. And they wanted to be a hip church, so we sang Balm and Gilead on limited occasions. So, but you know, so I'm doing this praise band, and I'm learning how to sing with an ear choir, people that aren't reading music, and I'm learning how to be present in the music in a different way. And for some reason, because God is just like this, I guess, when I'm doing this, I'm not having back pain. During the time that I am singing with this praise band, and in that worship service, I'm not having back pain. I'm not even noticing that I'm not having back pain until afterwards, and I'm like, you know, I don't know, I went jaunting down the aisle at the end of the service, and I'm like, holy cow, I haven't done that in months. Now, I can't explain this, so this is very upsetting to me, okay, because I need to explain things, and I still can't explain this today. But when I was singing, when I was in the music, and when I was in the worship, I didn't have pain. And that was as real as other times in my life I had pain all the time, especially first thing in the morning, especially at work. Yeah. All right, so I'll introduce all that to you to say that it's been a journey in coming to talking about healing's scary, and we want things to be explainable. We want to know why stuff, and that's not always going to be possible. So I hope that you're willing to dwell for a little while in the uncertainty with me while we explore some questions. Doable? All right. So when I was doing my research on this, I came across, I'd forgotten I had this, this statement that says, to speak about healing presupposes some conviction about health, which is its object. In every language, there is a similar word denoting a condition which fulfills a universal longing for life as it ought to be. And I like that definition for healing. I want to use that today. When we are seeking healing, we are seeking life as it ought to be. Or as someplace in that book says, to have life and that more abundantly. So, our story in John, our friend Jesus is out walking around at a festival time in Jerusalem and comes across this place where people go seeking healing, the Bethesda Pool. A place where it says that a great number of disabled people lie here, the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. And I'd like to propose here there are a lot of ways to be blind or lame or paralyzed. So when we call into this image, let's call in, let's imagine a Bethesda Pool of modern people. And these modern people, maybe they have physical ailment, maybe they have emotional ailment, maybe they have mental ailment, maybe they have spiritual ailment. But I would also argue that most of them have all of these dimensions contributing to their ailment. So let's imagine this crowd of people, of blind, lame, and paralyzed, around the Bethesda Pool. And I don't know if Jesus knew what the Bethesda Pool was therefore or not, but one of his strategies was to come in and to play stupid. So whether he knew or not, he comes up, he's like, what's this all about? What's this huge crowd here for? And learned that, let's see, one who was there had been an invalid for 38 years, and Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time. He asked him, well, do you want to get well? Now, the guy doesn't really answer the question. He sort of argues against the question. He says, well, I can't. They say, do you want to get well? That doesn't get answered. What the guy says, look, I have no one to help me into the pool. When the water is stirred, I'm all by myself in this world. Nobody takes care of me. And when I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. Now, what I'm told about this pool is the story around the pool was that an angel comes down, troubles the waters. When the waters start to stir, the first person in the pool gets healed and everybody else is out of luck. This is the story. And Jesus is pretty much saying that this isn't how I do it. Right? This is not Jesus' thing. He doesn't just heal the first person to race to the head of the line. I imagine that this crowd of people, if this were today, and there was magical healing water, Dr. Oz featured on his show, magical healing waters. For the first person that comes to the waters, there would be a studio audience riot. Right? I don't see this contributing to a healing atmosphere at all, do you? All right, so this guy is, man, there's a lot of furniture up here. Is it going to bother you guys am I too short to be down here? All right, okay, because I'm afraid I'm going to knock something over. Song sax is way more valuable than I am, so. All right, so at least it is to him. All right, so nobody's going to help me get into the pool when the water is stirred. When I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. So Jesus says to him, all right, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. And at once the man is cured, all right, and to his credit, he gets up, he picks up his mat, he walks. All right, so there's a couple of points that I want to make about healing here. One of them is that we participate in our healing. Okay? And one of the ways that we participate in our healing is we have to receive the healing when it comes. All right? The guy could have responded, I can't get up. I've been injured for 38 years. What makes you think I can get up? They don't have that conversation. They don't have that argument, which is really interesting because the guy's been pretty victim-based up to this point. Nobody takes care of me. And many people that I meet who are victim-based can't hear. They can't hear that you can be healed. And they can't hear, try something different. All right, so let's give this guy some credit. He picked up his mat, he walked. Right? And this is kind of an interesting, unusual, I got a friend who calls this the unhealing story. She says it's the unhealing story because nowhere here does it say that Jesus healed him. It just says the man was cured. And nowhere here does it say that the man knew who Jesus was. And most of the other healing stories that we have about Jesus are people going, you know me. You can fix me. You can fix me if you're just willing. Will you fix me? Okay, most of the Jesus stories about healing we have are, you can fix me, Jesus. That's not this. This is a guy who's like, and the religious leaders stop him. They're like, you're walking with your mat. You can't do that. It's against the rules. It's a Sabbath. Where have you been? Dude, man, you told me to pick up the mat and walk. Well, who told you? I don't know, some guy. Right? But Jesus comes back and touches back with this guy later. And I think this is important too. Once we've received the healing, it's important for us to not fall back into the habit of who we were when we were sick. Okay? I told you that story about my back. And what's interesting is when I'm mentally and emotionally tired, when I'm just at the edge of everything that I am in my day, I start to walk like this. And it's not because I'm physically stiff. I mean, occasionally it is. Like if I'm sitting on my foot too long and it falls asleep, I mean, it's sometimes I need to walk it off, and it takes me a minute. But sometimes it's just a matter of, I've gone back to autopilot from the days when I was in that kind of pain all the time, and I babied it because I had to. This is what I learned. When there's pain in your lower back, which is part of your center point, all right, and you oversleep, and you're in a hurry to get to work, and you're trying to rush, it makes it a lot worse. And the only way that I found that I could manage to manage the pain was to develop this pace, like this. If I tried to hurry off this pace, I was in a lot of trouble. But if I maintained that pace, I could get everything done all day long. I was doing all right. All right. So I still to this day will occasionally fall back into that when I'm not thinking about it. So Jesus checks back with this guy. And it says that he finds him at the temple. I wonder if the pool and the temple are near each other. I wonder if the guy's going back to hang out at the pool, because really, if he's been injured for 38 years, and this is his community. He's already said he doesn't have anybody to take him down to the pool. This is his community. These are his people. Him and all the other guys that couldn't get first in line down to the pool, sitting back there going, yeah, sure, they got a whole bunch of people to lug them down. We're never going to make it. This is his people. All right, and Jesus comes to him, finds him, and says, look, don't go back there. Your life has changed. Go. Live the change. Do something different. All right? So, but we have to participate in the healing. God does not heal people who don't want to be healed. And it is one of the things Jesus does every time. Do you want to be healed? Do you want this? Do you want it? We have to participate. And one of the ways we participate, I read this really interesting book. It's called Mind Over Medicine. I'll forget some important note, right? But it's called Mind Over Medicine. It's written by a woman named Lisa Rankin. And she's a medical doctor. And she can't stand the way that we do medical stuff in this country. It's upsetting to her. It was upsetting to her as a participant in it, as a doctor who was assigned like a 7-minute doctor visit. And she realized that she had a patient, she tells the story, that she had a patient that did not tell her the thing that he came to tell her, because the entire time of the visit, her hand was on the doorknob of the door, and she never came all the way into the room and sat down with the patient. She said, when I realized that, I stopped. She said, I stopped doctoring. I walked away from the whole thing. And then she realized she couldn't really walk away from the whole thing because that's what she was called to. But during that time that she was on that hiatus, she started doing a lot of research. Like information just started coming to her about spontaneous healing and about healing in general. And some of the conclusions that she drew out of that were that our attitude is not the only thing that determines our healing, but it is a huge contributor. She talks about you can have 100 people who are all in for knee surgery, right? And the people who have developed an attitude of confidence toward the healing and the restoration of that knee are more likely to heal faster with fewer complications. Like, she's got actual, data behind some of this stuff. And she said what's really interesting when we gather some of this data, like we gather data and control for the placebo effect. She said, what if we didn't control for the placebo effect? What if we assumed that the placebo effect was also an activating factor? Wouldn't that be interesting? So it's an interesting book. I recommend it. But she talks about she went back to doctoring. And when she went back to doctoring, she got involved in something that's outside of the insurance system. So she now has hour visits with her patients when she's getting their information. And as part of that information, she says, you talk about the problems that you need to address and that you want healed. And then one of the questions that she asks is, what needs to change in your life so that there's room for this healing? And she said what's really interesting is some of the answers that she gets back is stuff like, I know I need to leave my bad marriage even though I'm not ready to do it yet. Stuff that really doesn't seem to have a lot to do with medical stuff. And yet, that seems to be part of the healing journey for those people. She was really interesting when she started asking that question, and she started getting answers back that was more than just, I need to eat less and exercise. If you've been, I'm looking at a room full of people that have been around for a while. Right? Do I look the same as I did when you met me? No. I'm missing 75 pounds. All right. That's been a course of about 4 years at this point. It'll be 4 years June 10th that I started sticking to some of those changes. All right. Huge change. Wasn't an overnight change. And prior to that, I promise you that I've been a sturdy person my whole life. All right. And as a sturdy person, going to the doctor is not a lot of fun because the doctor always says, well, you really need to do something about your weight and you really need to eat less and exercise. Like I didn't know that, okay? And what I've come today is eating less and exercising is just so not the whole picture. It's not the whole picture. I had mental, emotional, and spiritual healing that had to happen in order for me to receive physical recovery. And the physical recovery did not come and stay until I addressed the mental, emotional, and spiritual stuff. And I have to continue to address it today. But it's a whole picture. It's a whole thing. We have to participate in our healing. And pretty much God said to me at some point at the beginning of that process that we're done. Because I was one of those people who would lose and gain and lose and gain and lose and gain and lose and gain. And God said, we're done. We're done playing this game. And until you start doing things my way, not a pound will come off, no matter what you eat or what you don't eat, and no matter what you exercise or don't exercise. I was eating 800 calories a day and maintaining the exact same weight. All right? Started working the program the way God wanted me to work the program. I was eating 3 times as much as I had been eating. Different stuff. But a lot more in volume. And weight fell off of me. I lost 60 pounds in 9 months. The other 15 I've lost over the last 3 months, but 6 months. But my point is, until I started doing things God's way, God was done. I'm willing to wait as long as you're willing to wait, is pretty much what God was saying. I can wait it out. I got, all the time in the world, right? Yeah. So we have to participate, and we have to accept the healing. And part of accepting the healing is that we have to choose not to go back to the old strategies and the old solutions. The other piece of that is that this may not come in the form that we expect. There's the way I think the healing is going to come. And I'm a very structured person for most of my life. I was like, this is the way healing happens. You go to the doctor tells you what's wrong with you, they give you a pill for it, you go away, you get better. It's very naive, all right? But these days, I see healing happening in so many other ways. I know you can't tell I'm grounded in 12-step, but I'm grounded in 12-step as well as being grounded in Christian tradition and experience. I got the Master's of Divinity, but my bread and butter these days is 12-step. But the two of them work together and work together really well. But I encounter people every day who are just like, I've been praying for God to fix me for a long time. And clearly God's not going to fix you on the timeline or on the agenda that you have planned. I mean, I wanted to eat whatever I wanted and still be skinny. I wanted God to strike me skinny. It just doesn't work that way. Fortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, it's amazing. My life is so much better in so many other ways that have nothing to do with my physical appearance. Anyways, the healing may not come the way we expect. I chose the Naaman story. I know it's a little long. There's a whole lot of complicated stuff in this Naaman story. But I'm fond of Naaman, who's a man of power and position in the enemy army. And they capture an Israelite who's serving in his household, who sees his illness and says, I know of a prophet over there on the other side of the lines who can help you with that. And he says, well, all right then, I'll go. And he goes, and they send a letter of introduction and a whole bunch of money with him. And the king on the other side thinks that they're setting him up to fail and they're fixing to have another battle. And somebody's like, oh, dude, man, we got a prophet for this. Send him on down to the prophet. And he goes down to the prophet, which is what the servant was saying in the first place. But you know how it is. The servant in the household, nobody really listens, right? Anyways, so he goes down and he sees the prophet. And the prophet pretty much sends a messenger out. Sends the mail boy out to say, oh, go down and wash in the Jordan, this trickle of river, muddy trickle of river. Wash in that 7 times, you'll be clean. And Naaman, a man of stature and power who has reduced himself to crossing to the other side for this help, says, you send the mail boy out to me and tell me to go wash in a trickle. We got better rivers over in my country. Why I had to come all the way over here so you could tell me to roll around in the mud and I'll be better? Really? He's a little insulted, right? This is the guy is supposed, and this is, he's got his picture. This is the guy is supposed to come out and stand and call on the name of the Almighty, his God, wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. That's how it's supposed to work. Did you not get the memo? I sent the memo. That's how it's supposed to work. Right? And his people, and I got to give credit to his people here too, because nobody wants to go to that guy and say, what if you just try what he said? You know, if he asked you to do something really complicated, like walk around the city 7 times for 7 days and blow your trumpets, you'd do that. You can't do this. What if you just try it? And he tries it, and he's healed. He does what the prophet's mail boy says, and he's healed. It came from someplace other than what he expected. What if I just try what somebody's suggesting to me? Even if it doesn't make any sense to me, it's completely illogical. What if? What if it doesn't work? Well, that is one scary thing. What if it does? There's the other scary thing. All right, so we handed out index cards when we started this gig, right? Everybody's got one? All right. So I like to give you a challenge as part of the sermon. I like to give you a mission. Your mission, should you choose to accept it. First of all, to identify what is my deepest desire to be healed. What is so broken in my life today that I deeply want it to be healed? What do I need restoration from? What do I need to be, what was that phrase I used? What do I need for life to be as it ought to be? Okay, go ahead and write that down. So then my next question is, what needs to change in my life to make room for that? And then my last question is, am I willing today, just for today, to put both of those circumstances in God's loving care and direction? This is yours. This is yours to take home. I just happen to believe that when I write things down, it's a lot harder for me to lie to myself about them. When I write stuff down and I look at it, I go, oh, that's not true. Even though in my head for 2 decades, I've been telling myself it's true. The second I write it down, it's, ooh. And so when I write down things, it helps me get real clear and real specific. And this is the promise that I carry around from God always. That is, that it's always this or something better. When I give God a clear and specific picture of what I believe today that I need, God promises that this will be delivered. Except if it's not, it's because God has something better in mind. So you get to take that home, you get to dwell on that, you get to ask yourself every morning, today, am I willing to put both of these circumstances in God's hands, in God's care and direction? We participate in our healing. We must accept it. We don't get to be like the guy in the life of Brian that's the ex-leper. Right? No Monty Python people here, that's okay. We accept our healing. And we look for it from more than just the one place that we think is the answer. We put it in God's hands and follow God's direction. We're fixing to do a little music here, and I'm going to offer, if there's anybody who wants an anointing today, I'm going to offer that, and Pastor Stephen's going to help me out as well. I thank you for your time and your attention. Many blessings.